They're all looking for it. Even the nurses and the doctors in the ward, they all want Padre Pio because they feel that he can do something for their sickness, and he does.
My name is Sean Moraine. I live here in the Buncrana Road. 20 years ago, my wife Anne was given half an hour to live. Various circumstances happened. The glove of Padre Pio was taken to her. I firmly believe that through the intercession of Padre Pio, Anne got a grace which leaves her the way she is today. She was physically cured, and I think I got a spiritual healing at the same time.
In 1981, Anne Mulryan was 6 months pregnant with twin boys when she suffered a series of brain hemorrhages. Doctors held out no hope for her. They wanted to keep Anne alive artificially to deliver the twins.
They asked me would I sign some forms that they could put Anne on what they called the life support machine until the unborn babies would be 38 weeks. And they said if I didn't do that, that Anne and the two unborn children would die within half an hour. And that's just the way it started off. So I obviously signed the forms, and they told me to go and say goodbye to Anne, and when then they see her, by this time her face was completely distorted. And there was blood coming from every part of her mouth, her nose, her ears. And I said my goodbyes, and they left me and took her away, and the next time I seen her, she was on the life support machine, completely unconscious, and the life support machine was doing the work for the unborn children, and that was it.
Well, they said that it was 7 blood vessels in the brain had burst, and the condition was there from I was born, and it was the blood pressure and the pregnancy had triggered it off. But that's all I know about the medical condition.
And I went down to my mother's home and my wife's mother's home to make arrangements for the other 2 children which we had to be looked after. And when I went to my mother's home, she gave me a little relic leaf of Padre Pio, which is one sitting over there, and she just said to me, that man will help you. I had never heard of Padre Pio, never knew the man existed.
Sean Mulryan then sought the intercession of the famous Capuchin friar. A Belfast man, Michael Murray, gave him one of the mittens or gloves once worn by Padre Pio himself.
We went towards Anne's bed, and by this time the sister said okay, and I put the mitt on Anne's head, and at that stage she pulled the mitt from her. I whispered into her ear first of all what it was. Michael told me to do that. I might as well say Anne didn't know any such thing as Padre Pio or Padre Pio's mitt either. But at this stage she pulled the mitt from her head, blistered herself 3 times with it, put it in her stomach and blistered her stomach 3 times, and just went back into the way she was, just lying there on the life support machine. And that's the first movement she had done in all those weeks and weeks and weeks. And I left the surgeons and I went down to my own little room, and when I opened the door of the room, I couldn't walk through the door of the room. Now, a mature man, it seems very silly saying it, but I couldn't walk through the door of the room for the smell of roses. It was overpowering. Years later, when I went to San Giovanni, and San Giovanni had investigated the case, they told me that that was the invisible presence of Padre Pio. However, anyway, Anne got so well, and they were all keeping telling me, oh no, you know, it's not going to last, it's not right, it's this, it's that, or the other. She got so well that I asked, could she come back down to our local hospital again so I could be near her and my children, rather running up and down the car to the Royal Victoria Hospital. At this stage, Anne was talking again. She went there full time with the pregnancy, and the 2 boys were born, Sean and Rory. Both 20 now, they'll be 21 now in September coming, and P was in their middle name. That's basically the story.
Oh, I definitely believe Padre Pio made me better. I put it all down to Padre Pio, because no matter what goes wrong in this house, I think I just have to ask him, and he gives it to me.
I do believe that we got a grace through the intercession of Padre Pio. I'm very reluctant to say miracle. I never have said miracle. I always say a grace. But I know the grace came from God, and I firmly believe it came through the intercession of Padre Pio.
Why are you reluctant to say the word miracle?
Because I would be so unworthy of such an honour from God. Totally unworthy.
Now, the prayer groups are very special. They were started in 1940 as a response to Pope Pius XII. He asked the faithful to pray at that time. And Padre Pio responded by asking his devotees, people who wrote to him, to get together in little groups and to pray for the Pope's intentions, for the missions, and for priests. They were the intentions of the prayer groups. And they spread from Italy all over the world. There would be over 300 now in all the dioceses around Ireland.
Padre Pio's love for Our Blessed Lady should encourage us to walk with Mary through life and to pray her rosary devoutly every day. May we use it as a chain that binds us closer to her Immaculate Heart.
Stigmata, I suppose, does attract people. You know, the holy wounds of Christ himself, that's very attractive to people, and especially, they hear about healing and cures and things like that, favours granted, they hear these things, and I suppose it does stir up the faith a bit, This man must be a signpost from God, if you like, for us at the present time. He was a man who suffered enormously in his life, but was also very joyful and a good-humoured man.
In the village of Moygauna in County Mayo, devotion to Padre Pio is particularly strong. Novenas in his honour are regularly held in the local church, and a 50-strong group are in the midst of preparations for a pilgrimage to Italy to visit the birthplace of the world's most famous Capuchin and the friary where he spent most of his life. After the novena, there's a chance to talk over some last-minute preparations for the pilgrimage with the organiser-in-chief, Father Francis Judge.
So we're all heading off now, so you've all have your everything packed and make sure you have your factors and everything with you.
It's an opportunity too for the pilgrims to reflect on their own devotion to Padre Pio.
His life, it was pretty tough, and his approach to life was so open and caring, and he was always in touch with other people rather than his own suffering. And I think that was something that everybody would eventually try to go to themselves, in that you have somebody here who's looking beyond themselves and looking towards others, and we could all learn from that.
I think that's very interesting, that he is a saint of our time. You see, that we have actually lived in the same period. I'm sure lots of people have met people who lived with him and worked with him when he was in his monastery.
There are 52 of us going most of them from the parish here. We're a very small parish in Moygauna, and actually we're the smallest parish in the Diocese of Killala. We've only 155 houses and about 500 of population. So it'd be like from home to home for most of us, because there are 45 or 50 of us going out there. So it'll be, it's grand to go out in a group. If I were to go out now on my own, I don't think it'd be the same at all.
You see, we're all neighbours and we're all friends already, and it's adding, I think, greatly to the atmosphere of the adventure. And
it's a bit like going on a school tour, really, isn't it?
It's very like a school tour, actually.
Yeah, they're all very happy. We're all wearing our hats, and everything is in order. We left Moygauna at 8 o'clock this morning. We had a lovely trip up, and looking forward to it now.
I don't expect any big transformation or anything like that. It will be a holiday, and I hope it will be a holiday, and a very enjoyable holiday, with a very prayerful atmosphere as part of it. Because I think when a group goes like that, if they have the fun together and pray together, it can do an awful lot for them, just by building up their spirits and just making them happy. And if they come back happy, I think it would be a great thing.
After their arrival in Rome, the pilgrims make their way to the village of Pietrelcina, Padre Pio's birthplace. Having joined the Capuchin order when he was just 16, the young friar was ordained in 1910 in the nearby town of Benevento.
Okay, this is the Church of St. Mary of the Angels. This is where Padre Pio said his first Mass on the 14th of August 1910. It was 4 days after he was ordained. But then later on, as people got to know him, they began coming and coming and coming, and his Masses got so popular that the people had to really work hard in getting the church looking right for him.
Often in ill health, he returned to Pietrelcina and spent 6 years there, living a prayerful, solitary life.
We're now here at the tower where Padre Pio spent 6 years after his ordination. He was so sick that he had to be brought away on his own. So he came back to his birthplace for 6 years, and this place is called the Tower. And he spent it up here on his own, praying and studying for the full 6 years. But take a look up and see where his bed is and how poor it was at the time.
Still an aura or presence in the area. You know, you get from the amount of people who are coming, the pilgrims, you get that feeling that they're getting something out of it. You know, it's not just we're here because they're selling pictures or postcards of him. You know, they're here to actually see the locations and try and actually maybe touch where he was or walk where he walked in the past. And you do get that sense of presence really in the place. Yeah, definitely.
Next stop in the pilgrimage is the town of San Giovanni Rotondo. Here in the Capuchin Friary, Padre Pio spent most of his life, from 1916 till his death in 1968. There are scores of hotels and souvenir shops, all depending on the constant stream of pilgrims for their business. Despite the crowds and the hustle and bustle around the friary, there's a definite sense of reverence amongst the pilgrims. For many, just to be here is the culmination of a lifetime ambition.
Hi, Kieran. Moy Gauna, M-O-Y. M-O-Y is G-O-W-N-I-G-H. That's it.
Taking part in the pilgrimage is a definite physical challenge. Many of the Moygauna group are well into their 70s, yet they willingly trek up a hill for the Stations of the Cross in a beautiful setting overlooking the friary. There are groups of pilgrims here from all over the world, united in their devotion to Padre Pio.
We're going to gradually make our way down, very slowly, along the sides of the steps that you can hold onto the wall. What?
With the Stations of the Cross completed, the pilgrims move on to spend some time at the tomb of Padre Pio. The tomb is to be found in a special crypt deep inside the friary. There are always crowds here, yet the atmosphere is silent and prayerful. After visiting the tomb, the Moygauna pilgrims are about to have a private audience with Father Ermelindo, a Capuchin friar who worked with Padre Pio for many years and knew him well. Everyone regards this meeting as a special privilege.
Padre Pio was very humble, never said, I'm holy, I'm man of God. God gave me this sign, the stigmata, to make miracles by location, to read the inner of the, no, never. He said only, I'm a mystery for myself, and I'm the biggest sinner in the world. Now I will be near the door. I will touch your head with the glove and the crucifix.
Oh, I've complete different outlook of Padre Pio and the whole thing in general since I came over here. I think he was a fantastic man. For a man that was in such a bad health, he was continually praying. He was trying to help people that were sick themselves. And he was a wonderful man, I believe, to go to confessions to. If he felt you weren't telling the truth, you could be told by him. I think one great saying he had, and he always used it, was hope, prayer, and don't worry. I think that was a great speech he always finished up with. And I admire him for that.
Padre Pio himself would get very, very annoyed if people continued to look at him in the church, or if they looked at him when they were attending Mass. He would sit in the choir, and if they looked, he would lean forward and point to the tabernacle. And that's the image I have of Padre Pio. I think he is a signpost for us, merely pointing to the Lord, because he spoke about his love. His love was for the Mass, for the confessional, and for the rosary, and he just points to all of these things and says, look, I had devotion to these, and this is what you should do.
Where does it danger people focusing on this Capuchin friar rather than focusing on love of God, love of one's neighbour, worship and sacraments? That's a danger that we need to be aware of. The great German theologian in the last century, Karl Rahner, once said that saints are living commentators on the gospel. They're people who show us how we can live, how we can truly be Christian, how we can make the gospel of Jesus Christ living and active. So there are many ways, there are many commentators on the gospel. The Padre Pio is a commentary.
Padre Pio's message is one of evangelization, that he was so human, so caring, and that he was really another Christ standing for Jesus. He lived the passion, death, and resurrection of Jesus, which is the core of our faith. And that was Padre Pio. He was another Christ, and that's why people are drawn to him, because they feel when they pray to him, they're praying to Christ crucified.
Pilgrimage which the people of Moygauna will hold in their hearts and minds for many years to come. That ends the programme for this evening. Do join us again at the same time on Monday next. Until then, from the Capuchin Friary here in Cork, from all of us in the Nationwide team, a very good evening to you.